Hi, this is Natalie Hoffman of FlyingFreeNow.com, and you're listening to the Flying Free Podcast, a support resource for women of faith looking for hope and healing from hidden emotional and spiritual abuse. Welcome to episode 27 of the Flying Free Podcast. Today we have 3 excellent questions from women, and they are all around this theme of should I stay or should I go? There's so much to talk about, so let's dig in.
What advice would you give to women who choose to stay with their abusers as far as how to pray for them and intercede for them in being released from what I believe is a stronghold that abusers are under from the enemy? And I understand ultimately it's up to them to choose to receive God's freedom from the enemy and from the strongholds that they're living in. That's my current situation. I'm in my 4th abusive marriage, and sometimes I think this is where God's called me, and then other times I think that this is what He's been trying to release me from all these years. So I would just ask what advice you'd give for women to intercede for their husband that choose to stay.
Okay, Rachel, hi.
Hey.
What is your experience with, I can relate to what this woman is talking about. I spent years praying for mine. What about you?
Yes. Yeah. I think that the thing that we have in common, you and I and this woman and many others, is this feeling of responsibility for our husbands, as though the only thing that's going to help them to change is if we stay, if we pray, if we're interceding for them. And if we do that hard enough, maybe someday they will, have a soft heart. Maybe they'll change their ways of blame and accusations that are so characteristic of emotional abuse. Maybe they'll be the person that that God can have them to be, that God designed them to be. And it is such a trick because we genuinely love these men and we want the best for them and we want to help them be the best. And that is one of the most difficult things to untangle from when you awaken to what's really going on with your marriage, because you have spent the entire time being responsible for them, trying to, as you say, Natalie, be the wind beneath their wings and help lift them up, as I think Christian wives are encouraged to do. And there's nothing wrong with that in a healthy relationship. But when there's an abusive power dynamic going on, what happens is that willingness to give and to pray and to be soft towards them and only work to encourage them in the ways that you perceive that they need it. They unfortunately take advantage of it. And that is one of the most gruesome things about this whole dynamic of abuse, is that the woman or the person who's being abused has good intentions and only good love. Meanwhile, the abuser is taking advantage of it, using it against her, using it to control her. And it is horrid. And waking up to that is scary, and it almost feels too big to wrap your mind around. And then to know what to do from there, I think is where we're at right now. Like, oh my gosh, how can I stop doing this? Well, that's what you have to do. You have to utterly change your mindset about who you are responsible for. And that is yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's why boundaries is such an important thing to learn, because this whole exercise in an abusive marriage is a display of a lack of boundaries. So yes. Learning how to be responsible for yourself, how to allow your husband to be responsible for himself is really hard. And it's painful. It is painful to allow your husband to to take responsibility for himself, because it feels mean. It feels like you're the worst person ever, and that you don't love him. And that's not the truth, but that's what it feels like. And so you have to grieve that. I think you have to grieve that you can't be responsible for him anymore. You can't keep this whole thing together anymore, because you are called to be responsible for yourself and to take care of the responsibilities that God has given you. And that is not being his conscience, being the basically taking up for him in the ways that he's called to take up for himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that when we talk about praying for our husbands, it's like one of the ways that we can kind of control something that's completely out of our power. We think, well, yes, I can't change him, but maybe God can. And the thing we have to remember is that God is also has really good boundaries, and he does not force himself on anybody.
And this is where, Natalie, and I don't want to get off on a rant about theology, but I'm just going to say certain types of theology, I think, make it more difficult to come to the fact that God is not going to break into your husband's will and make him do the things that you are praying about.
Right.
It is up to your husband to make the choices to allow God to heal him, because what walking with God is all about surrender.
Yes.
It's all about yielding to the Holy Spirit and to Jesus, and allowing that truth to work inside your heart. But that's the very opposite of what narcissistic abusers do. They can't yield to anything. They don't. It's the very pathology of that mindset. And so that makes it very difficult, I think, for them to have authentic relationships. And I don't want to overgeneralize here, because it's not a good thing to do. But I think it's very hard for them to really experience the overwhelming transformation that comes from the Holy Spirit, because they can't. Everything about them prevents them from that yielding, that surrender to Jesus. And so God is not going to do that. If the heart is hardened, he is not going to break in and suddenly start controlling your husband like a puppet master. I don't believe that is who God is.
Right. I think that as women of faith, we tend to spiritualize a lot of the problems that we have. And I mean, I don't know why we do that. It's just, it kind of, I don't know. I feel like that was kind of inbred inside of me growing up in a Christian home, that everything was spiritualized. And that sounds really wonderful, and it sounds biblical, and it sounds godly, but it's actually not. It's a way. It's actually a form of denial and a way of escaping reality, and a way of actually, it's interesting that you use the word surrender, because I have that word underlined and circled in my notebook right now. Surrender, only I was thinking in terms of our surrendering to God and our surrendering to reality. Surrender, our responsibility is to say, I don't have control over this situation. I don't have control over this human being. And my praying about it is not going to fix the problem. So I need to surrender to the reality of what's going on here, which is I'm in my 4th abusive marriage, and I need to make my own. God doesn't, when we make choices in life, that's not us wresting power away from God. That's impossible to do. What that is taking responsibility for the life that God gave to us. God gave us autonomy. He gave us choice. He gave us free will. And then he says to us, now take responsibility, take dominion over your life, take dominion over and do what you are called to do. And then we are responsible for us, what we are called to do. So I would say to this woman, if you believe, with all of your heart, 100%, that God has called you to help abusive men, then that is your choice. But then you have to take ownership of that choice. That you are, this choice wasn't put upon you by God, but it was actually a choice that you made, that this was your heart's desire to do this. You wanted to be a rescuer, and you wanted to do this. And then, but when we make, one of the reasons why we don't like this idea of choices, because then we're responsible for the outcomes of those choices. And we don't like that part. That part is not, we don't like that. Nobody likes that. Us human beings, we don't. And a lot of times our abusers, that's one of the reasons why they put everything on us too. They give us all the responsibility because they don't want the responsibility for the outcome. They want to be able to blame everybody else. But the real important thing to remember about growing up into maturity and adulthood and even maturity in Christ is that we take responsibility for us and our choices, and we let go of everybody and everything else. We can love people, but loving them means that we don't control them. We don't try to make them make good choices. We don't do that. We make good choices, and we let others make the choices that they choose to make.
Because we're only human beings. We're not called to be God. We can't be God. That's not who we are. And it's like, if you think about it, like the idea that somehow if we just try hard enough, that we could somehow control someone else in order to get them to do the outcome that we desire, that's sort of thinking that we have the power that God has, and we just don't.
Right.
We are finite, and He is sovereign, and He is bigger than all of this. Right. And He doesn't expect you to play that role. He doesn't want you to play that role. You are you. Be who He designed you to be.
Yeah. There's two other things I wanted to bring out about this question too. One is the idea of praying then. And the only thing I would say there is that we are called to intercede for one another, but that doesn't mean that we have to be married to the people that we're interceding for. Okay. Yes. So you definitely pray for your husband, but you can also pray for that man, and you don't have to be, submitting yourself to or exposing yourself to a toxic environment that's destroying your own soul. If someone was praying for example, and one of the ways you can kind of see this is by putting yourself in more of a bird's eye view and pretend that you're looking at a different couple. Pretend that you're looking at your daughter or your niece or some other young woman that you love and her marriage. And what would you tell her? Would you be saying to her, you know what? What you need to do is you need to stay and pray, and that'll solve all your problems, or that'll make you feel better about your life, or that'll be your calling in your life, is to stay and pray. Or would you, and if you were praying for her, what kinds of things would you be praying on her behalf? How would you be interceding for her? Lord, help her to be able to endure abuse. Help her to be able to, what would you be praying for her? I'm not going to say, I'm just saying, I guess I know what I would be praying for. I'd be praying that she would be rescued, that she would make good decisions for her life, that she would get out. And so what about you? You pray for you can pray for that man, but what about your life? What about the daughter of God that you are? And so just think about that. And then also, because you had mentioned that this is your fourth marriage to an abusive man, that I remember watching, have you ever seen, it's that musical, Phantom of the Opera. Have you seen that, Rachel?
I know. Yes.
Okay. Well, in that, I remember watching that. I saw the movie version, the TV movie version, and it's really good. It's really creepy. But I remember thinking, I kind of felt like she did. Like, I wanted to kind of rescue that guy living underneath the opera house. He was an abuser. He was abusive. And but I thought, what if she could rescue him? And if I was in her shoes, I would be very tempted to think that I could rescue him and bring him out into the light. But then you see, as the show goes on, he's not interested in that. He wants to bring her down into the darkness. And there is no way on God's green earth that she would ever have the power to bring him up into the light. And it had, that movie had a happy ending, but my point is that I think a lot of us women, especially women of faith, we tend to think, well, with God on my side, I can bring this man up out of darkness into the light. And if I could just do that, that would make my life worthwhile. That would make me valuable in the eyes of God. It would make me valuable in my own eyes. It would make me valuable in the eyes of this other person. My life would have worth if I could accomplish this.
Mm-hmm. And isn't it romantic?
It is. It is kind of this idealized romantic idea, and it's all a bunch of hogwash.
No. Yeah.
Hogwash.
Yeah. Yep.
So, So anyway, I guess if I would tell this woman and anyone else who's on there, you don't even have to have been married to the person, but I know, some of us dated different, went through and dated different guys that were not healthy. And it seemed like we were just attracted to the bad boys. And
exactly.
It's like, well, I want to help them. And I watched my daughter go through this. She was attracted to a bad boy last year. Thank goodness she's out and now she's with a good boy. But
good.
I was scared to death of what was going to happen to her. But she thought she could actually help this guy. You can't do that. So anyway, we should probably move on to the next question. Unless you have anything else to add. Did you want to say anything else?
Oh, I just think that it's sad because I know in my journey, I've come to realize how much my childhood set me up for being only attracted to people who were completely unavailable to me, and I really was. And people who are kind were not attractive to me. I felt like they were wimpy. I guess, there's that arrogance, that confidence that comes with narcissism, like that they are the only ones who are right. And it's just sad because I think that's the case for a lot of women where their childhoods just set them up. And, they make choices based on that.
And Christianity or faith it plays into that as well.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Women are supposed to be the rescuers and the homemakers and the people that, enable these men to be all that they are created to be. And that's not the truth. So
it's not the dynamic that God established.
Right. Okay, let's listen to the second question now.
Hi there. My question has to do with the decision of staying in a marriage or leaving if your spouse has realized that the ways that he has been treating you have been emotionally and mentally abusive. My husband has said time and time again that he realizes that what he has been doing is abusive, and I believe that he wants to change. I mean, I've seen some changes in his behavior. I think some of the patterns are still there, but I think that he sincerely wants to be different. I mean, he's even gone to counseling and that sort of thing, but I just feel like my heart is so hurt and wounded that I don't know that I can actually picture myself being vulnerable with him again. And it's really scary to think about being vulnerable with him. So then I turn to, well, if I leave now, I'll never know. But also, I just feel like I'm in so much pain, and I guess I'm just confused because his desire is to change, but I'm just so hurt. So anyway, thanks.
Okay. Well, I definitely remember going through this and feeling like this. I had separated from my now ex, and he was making some efforts. We had already been through this cycle in the past where I had gotten help and he had made some effort, and then he kind of backslid again. And so this was kind of an ongoing cycle in our relationship. And by the time it came down to the separation where we were physically separated, I was really I was not looking anymore for kind of half-assed efforts. I was looking for heart change. Because here's the thing that I realized is that anybody can change their behavior temporarily. If we want something bad enough, we can go through behavioral changes. But it's not necessary if it's not rooted in genuine heart change, then it's not going to last. It's going to be, it's not going to last. And I think that there are ways that you can kind of tell if this is genuine heart change. Rachel, think about people that you know who are people of integrity. I mean, my husband now, he's a man of integrity. He is who he is. You are dating a man who is who he is. They're just really solid men. They have integrity. They're not going to lie to you. They're not going to try to pull the wool over your heads. If you ask them a question, they're going to give you the whole answer. They're not going to withhold information to try to manipulate you or yank your chain. They're not going to push your buttons on purpose to see you, cry or to see you freak out or whatever. They would never even dream of doing those things.
Yeah.
Let alone do them. And so these are true men of integrity because it's like the color red all the way through, or the color, or like, what am I trying to say? Like if you had a piece of metal gold, and they're solid gold all the way through, rather than being a chunk of gold rather than being a chunk of coal with a gold veneer on the outside.
Right. Or fool's gold.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think that, so I've got some ideas, but I'll see if you have some ideas too, Rachel, as far as what you would do to be able to really tell if this is going to actually move in a good direction eventually.
Yeah, I think the key couple things. First of all, you said he's going to counseling, and that's fine. That's good. I wouldn't let that be the end all be all by any means, because anyone could go to a couple of counseling sessions and act like they are, really putting their effort into it. So what is he doing outside the counseling sessions in order to implement what he's learned in his own life? Not using that to control you or to put burdens on you or make accusations of you, but is he focused? Like, is he zeroed in on himself? And if he's so, aware of what he's doing and how much that affects you, what is he doing about it? Is he really zeroed in on trying to make some changes in the moment to moment basis? Or is he, sort of maybe half-heartedly doing a few things, but most of the things, are like you said, the patterns are still there. I think that someone who knows that their wife has experienced an excruciating amount of pain at their behest, caused by them, that they are going to be overwhelmed with grief, and that grief is going to propel them to really do a deep dive within themselves and do whatever it takes to not act like that anymore, because they love their wife. They don't want to be like this, nothing else matters except fixing this. Mm-hmm. And the way you can tell that also is over time. Is he being consistent about his behavior changes and being zeroed in on himself? Or is he sort of, maybe doing it a little bit here, a little bit there, but, everything else is pretty much the same. And see, I think the trick is for us, we are so used to just being thankful for the slightest thing.
Yes.
Like lavishing on our gratitude because they did just one thing, one tiny little thing. And then it's hard, because then if we expect more, if we set this expectation that he's going to be zeroed on himself, we feel bad because he's done this one thing. And what do we want? Like, what do you expect? Like, you're just so demanding, and we can even accuse ourselves of that. Like, well, he's done, we have a very compassionate, empathetic spirit. I think all of us do. I feel comfortable saying that. And so that works against us, because we say, well, he did a little bit, and so I should, maybe I will have sex with him tonight. Or maybe I don't need to move out of the guest bedroom, or maybe I don't need to stay in the guest bedroom anymore. Keep those boundaries and keep your expectations high, because the expectations have to be the inverse, or like basically the depths of your pain. And I know you're in a lot of pain here. I can tell. And that's what you said. And so the depths of your pain, that's he needs to be putting in basically the inverse amount of effort in order to heal himself. It's not just, I throw you a few bones and we go on our way.
Right.
It's, oh my gosh, I have caused my wife this unbelievable amount of pain and sorrow in our marriage. And I am going to make the commensurate amount of effort in order to deal with this so this doesn't happen again. Do not accept crumbs, because that is a trap. And all it means is that they're not really doing the work, and they're not going to be able to change over the long term.
That's right. And I would say too, that you may need to make yourself vulnerable. In other words, expose yourself to the potential of realizing the truth, by making sure that you are giving him feedback, by making sure that you are not tiptoeing around issues in order to avoid an abusive incident. Mm-hmm. Or to avoid him, criticizing you or whatever. I know one of the ways that I knew, because mine was extremely covert, and he had everybody convinced that he was changing. But on the back end, there was one thing he kept saying that was my clue. That became my clue that nothing was really changing. And that was this. He would always say, well, you do things too.
Accusation.
He could not get past that. Well, you do things too. And mm-hmm. that's what made me realize he has no idea. He's equating his abuse of me with for example, I didn't do the things he did, first of all. But secondly, what he was upset with me about was when I called him out on things. He mm-hmm. hated that. That to him was abusive. I was abusing him when I said, please don't do that. Or what you just did was not appropriate. We don't talk to people like that. Or, when I called him out, then he would get angry, and I was being a meanie, and I was being a disrespectful and whatever, mm-hmm. just for being an adult. And so, and yes, when we would have altercations that were really, really bad, there were times when I went bat, crazy, and I yelled and I swore. And then of course I was an abuser for yelling and swearing. I wasn't yelling I wasn't saying anything abusive to him, but I would yell about the situation. Like, why aren't you listening? That kind of thing. Why don't you take responsibility? I don't understand why you're lying to me. I know you're lying to me. You're not, owning up to what you did. You need to. So that's what I mean by yelling. I wasn't like, you blankety blank blank and you blank. I don't. That's not how I operate. So anyway, but when you do that, when you confront them and you give them feedback about their behavior, you are risking them coming back at you and saying horrible things to you, either blaming you for it or telling you lies about what they did or didn't do or whatever. And that really hurts. And so, but that's the only way that you're going to know that he's really changed is if you confront, is if you keep pressing. And I've talked to other women who really have believed, I've seen this over and over again, actually. They really believe that their husband has really changed. And usually within 3 months, they're back again saying, nope, I guess he hasn't. Because guys
so sad.
Yeah, it is. It's really sad. And they just keep continuously going around in circles with these men. They're not going to, believe me. Okay, here's the other thing I would say. If they've really genuinely changed, your socks are going to be knocked right off your feet. It is going to be so obvious to you because it is going to be so absolutely miraculously obvious to you. So if you're not feeling that you trust your gut, because your gut knows exactly what's going on. You may not, because we've got this whole wishful thinking thing going on here. And it's really, really hard to get out of that mode of denial. But your body knows exactly what's going on because your body is picking up, you are brain mapping him. And again, I've brought this book up before, but I definitely recommend the book Brain Talk by Dr. David Schnark. You're brain mapping him all the time, unconsciously. So your body knows what's real before your conscious mind does. So go with your gut there. And also, and the other thing that I want to say too is that, and this is really a theme throughout this whole podcast, episode 27, I'm sorry, is the idea that it's your choice. You get to make a choice. And there is not this, God is not up there with this big hammer going, okay, better make the right choice or I'm going to squash you. That's not how God works. That's not Jesus. That's not our Savior. So he says, you're an adult woman. You are mature. You can make a choice. You have to decide for your own life what is best. You have to decide what is going to nurture and nourish the child that I created when I created you. Because that, at the end of the day, you're the only one that you're responsible for before God. God is, you're not going to stand before God one day and say, and God's going to say, so let me know how things went, with so-and-so's life. How did you and what you're in the decisions that you made affect their life? No, he's going to say, how did you steward your own life? How did you make decisions that were, actually, I don't know what he's going to say. Okay. I'm just, that's maybe just another story we tell ourselves. I don't know. But anyway, I do know that there's a principle of taking responsibility for our own lives though. And that we are not responsible for other people's lives. Is there anything you'd like to add there before we go on to the third question, Rachel?
Yeah, I just want to just share my heart with her, because I can tell that she is really wanting to do the right thing. And I think that's true for all these women, is that they just want to do the right thing. And it's so confusing to know which way is up. And I just want to encourage you to really, as much as you should be looking for your husband to zero in on himself, zero in on you and Jesus, and just keep looking up to him, and focus on caring and stewarding yourself and your own boundaries and your relationship with God. And that's such a simple thing, but I think it's really important for women like us to almost be validated in that way and have permission or something, because we've been, we're told that we just need to sacrifice and keep sacrificing, and whatever we've done is not enough. So actually you have enough, you have done enough, you are enough. You just be and just rest. Easier said than done.
Yes, that's really good. Okay, let's listen to our last question. Here we go.
Hello, Natalie and Rachel. Just thank you both so much for speaking so much truth into the lives of so many women that are blessed by your podcast and by your articles, Natalie. My question is, I am married for 5 years, and this year is when I really started to confront the confusing issues and just really able to admit to myself of emotional and spiritual abuse that started while we were dating and engaged and carried on into marriage. And the signs have been there, just confusing, being confused and everything. But now that I'm 5 years in, I listened to your podcast and I think, wow, you both lasted so long in your marriages and went through so much before the Lord really helped you stand up for yourselves and do what was best for you and your family, you and your kids. And I am not married as long. We just celebrated our 5-year anniversary, and I'm seeing the signs, and we actually are separated now. And I'm not necessarily looking for reconciliation. I'm pretty certain that that this man and I, it's an unhealthy relationship. And so I guess my question is it too soon? And I think ultimately I have to bring that before the Lord and him answer me. But can you speak to people or that maybe, are in young marriages, but are seeing the signs now? And what would you say to those people? Thank you.
Okay, I just want to say, I want to jump on this and just say that my hope and prayer is that that this issue would become so much in the forefront of our minds, that women would get out of their marriages as soon as they realize this is an abusive marriage. Like as soon, like if you realize that 1 month in, that you file for divorce, that if you realize that, like as soon as possible. Because the longer that, especially if you can get out before you have kids, because the longer that you wait, the more complicated it gets, the more other people get involved it's just, so yes, for this woman, yes, you can get a divorce, even though you've only been married for 5 years. And I had 9 kids. So my 25 years of marriage, that's the beautiful thing that came out of that 25 years. But with my kids, my daughters, if my daughter was going to live my life over again, I would tell her right in that first year, because I knew 6 months into my marriage, I felt this horrible pit in my stomach that I had a lifetime ahead of me that was not looking real good or real hopeful. Yeah. And if I would tell my daughter in the same shoes, I would say, get out now, get out and run as far and as fast as you can. Because here's the thing, these people don't change. So if you do decide, and again, it's your choice. So if you do decide to stay, just know what you're staying for. Know what you're buying into. You are buying into a life of abuse. And if that's what you want to do, you get to choose that. It's your choice, and Jesus will be with you through it. But if you decide that's not the life for me, you get to choose to get out. And when I did get out, I started a new life, and I have an amazing marriage. I'm actually experiencing a Christian marriage for the first time in my life, like a real, authentic Christian marriage. And it is beautiful, and it is modeling something for my kids that they never had before. And the peace in my life, my parenting, all aspects of my life have been completely transformed since I got out of living in poison and am now living in, and whether I had stayed single or married, my life was turning a corner and becoming far more beautiful once I got out. Now, was it hell to get out? Yes. But the other side of that hell is a lot of potential for amazing things to happen.
I'm so happy for her that she woke up so early. I wish, we knew that there was something wrong, but I didn't have words for it. I was so ashamed that my husband treated me this way. I couldn't even reach out for help. I was just trying to get through day by day. And, I got married when I was 18, divorced at 33. I spent the entirety of my 20s trying to, I was raising our son, but also just trying to make this thing work. Mm-hmm. And, this is the way it is, and God was there, and I'm okay with it. I'm just happy for her that she knows it, and she was able to reach out and educate herself and come to the realization of what's going on. And what you do about it now is up to you. And I know that you're going to make the right decision, but, I guess it's weird to say, but congratulations.
I agree. I echo that.
Yeah. So, keep educating yourself. And I think at the core of this question is, is it okay for me to think that this is the way it's going to be without having done my time or put in a whole bunch of years and whatever else? It is. You've seen it. You can see it consistently. 5 years is a long time.
Yes.
And if there is no signs of repentance, godly repentance, then I think you've come to the truth, and what you do with that is up to you.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining us for this podcast episode. And if you could do us a favor and leave a review, leave a 5-star rating if you think this is worth 5 stars, and also leave it's even better if you can possibly leave some words that would describe what you think about this podcast and how it's changed your life. That will help other people who are looking for podcasts like this to find us. And that's what we want. We want the women who need to find us so that they can get the help that they need. And that's it. Fly free.